you've seen plenty of reef decks, and Esper Control is still walking around, and Jeskai makes in its plays here and there. How about something a little bit different? There are some cards out of M20 that are really interesting to play with that I got to actually play in paper in various limited scenarios, and one of them was in a sealed format, and this card pretty much won me a lot of games. So I figured, why don't we explore it in a constructed format? And the card, of course, is the Steel Overseer. So I figured we'd make something that is a lot of fun to play with artifacts and a blue core with a little bit of extra highlights. So we're going to go ahead and take a look at this deck that is focused around the Steel Overseer, tons of artifacts, and just a good time. So the deck revolves around the Steel Overseer and its supporting cast of various different artifacts. It's very Planeswalker heavy. The original builds of this weren't necessarily terribly Planeswalker centric. It started off with 4 copies of Karn, Scion of Urza, and then kind of progressed from there. The whole point is you want to flood the board with artifacts and have your Steel Overseer just continuously get exceptional value off of them. Now, the beginning of this deck was just blue and artifacts, and as it evolved, we went towards a more Dimir color scheme for more removal options, and eventually settled on a white and blue combination so that we can get the added abilities of Teferi for card draw and more control, as well as some prison effects like Prison Realm, Conclave Tribunal, etc. to have a little bit more control on the board state. Now, I will go through the list, and then we'll talk about a little bit about the strategy and how it works. So we start with 2 Steel Overseers. These guys, what they do is they're 2 mana 1/1s, but at any point you can just tap it to put a 1/1 counter on all artifact creatures that you control, including itself. So pretty much every turn you're tapping it to make it bigger. I got 4 of those. I have 4 Voltaic Servants. These are 1/3s that untap an artifact at the beginning of your end step. So let's say you play your Steel Overseer, you tap them for counters, and then it untaps with this. This is a great little engine piece that helps out so many things, including your other artifact creatures that might be attacking, that can then re-ready themselves for a defense phase as well. I have 2 treasure maps purely just for the tokens that they create, which make your Karn constructs bigger, but at the same time, it's just good for cycling and for mana ramp as well. I have 4 Sai, Master Thopterus. This is a legendary creature. What he does is he slams onto the board, and every time you play a artifact, he creates a 1/1 Thopter token. Now, the Thopters are flyers. They're artifacts. They get counters off of Steel Overseer. It's a pretty darn awesome option that you can have with Sai. He can flood the board if you can kind of hold back and keep him alive. Eventually, as you start playing things, he will flood the board to create chump blockers that grow and make your card constructs bigger as well. 3 Prison Realms. This is just something to sort of keep creatures off the board, as well as Planeswalkers at bay. The Scry ability is just extra juice. Dovin here, you will go pretty wide with a lot of the creatures you're going to be playing. And what he does is he upticks, and until the end of turn, anytime you attack your opponent and it connects for damage, you put a loyalty counter for every creature that has done that. Now, this can get pretty steamrolly once you have a wide board from Sai or just from the other artifact creatures that you're getting. But this is an awesome little addition. Only one of, because he's not necessarily an integral part to the winning strategy or the win condition, but he's still pretty good. I have 3 Teferis. Obviously, as soon as you're playing Azorius Colors, you're going to throw this in. For the 3 mana and for what it does, this card is a broken to shit card, and it really is frustrating to play against, and you almost have to have your own version of it. If you're not playing Teferi in any blue-white deck, you're doing it wrong. A 1 of, a 2 of, a 3 of, a 4 of, it doesn't matter. This card is just insane. It freezes and turns the game into a your turn, my turn kind of situation, but your turn is always my turn and my turn is always my turn. It's kind of annoying in that sense. We've got 3 of them on the board as well. I have 2 Traxos Scourge of Krug. Desperate to fit more in here, but I can't find a good place for him. I want to maybe cut a Prison Realm for a 3rd Traxos. Either way. Now, it comes in as a 4 mana 7/7, which is kind of, I guess that's the meme in other card games, or has been for a while, but it's got trample. So what's the downside? Well, it comes in tapped and it doesn't untap unless you play a historic spell. Historic spells are sagas, planeswalkers, legendary creatures, and artifacts. Well, we've got tons of artifacts, we've got tons of planeswalkers, and we have legendary creatures. So this will always be able to untap. But the benefit of this is also the fact that the Voltaic Servant will always untap this at the end of the turn. So you play the Traxos, you untap it with Voltaic Servant, you attack, he tramples through, he goes crazy, you untap with Voltaic Servant, and then he's ready to go to defend. Easy. Conclave Tribunal, I've got 2 of these. Again, with the convocability and the amount of little units that you'll have on the board, it shouldn't be a problem to actually tap them for colorless mana or do what you got to do. No problem. 1 time Settle the Wreckage, because board clear is going to be a little bit difficult and you don't necessarily want to give up a wide board. But at one point, dealing with a mass assault or just a pesky big time creature that's coming at you, Settle the Wreckage will deal with it. 4 times Karn. I typically, depending on the board state, obviously, but more often than not, slam him down and go -2 to create a token right away. With the other units, the other artifacts that are already on the board, this is going to be an optimal play because for 4 mana, you're getting a Planeswalker and you're probably getting a 3/3 or a 4/4 Karn construct on the board right away to protect it. I got 4 of these. I've got 4 Tezzerets. Again, Tezzeret, card draw, creates artifacts, and the -9 ability is bonkers. His -9 is you basically get an emblem that says at the beginning of your end step, search your library for any permanent, put it into the battlefield, shuffle your library. Land, planeswalkers, enchantments, artifacts, whatever. It's just go get it, have fun, do your thing. And lastly, 2 times Teferi, Hero of Dominaria. I'm really trying to whittle this deck down to be a little bit more consistent and find a good package, maybe by cutting out Dovin and maybe a Settle the Wreckage, etc., to up my Teferi count. I just felt so dirty adding more Teferis in and being a deck like that, but gosh damn it, it's so fun to have them in there. And when you have your 4 planeswalkers just running in sequence, it's so efficient and so goddamn good. 2 Teferis. I'm sure that in your mind you're like, play 4, you idiot, but well, there was a part of me that was whispering over my shoulder not to be that kind of degenerate of playing 8 Teferis, but I guess that's what the meta is. This is not a tier 1 deck, this is a for fun deck, which we were having. All right, your standard colored land package, Plains, Islands, Glacial Fortress, Hallowed Fountain, but here it is, 4 interplanetary beacons because, well, we're going to be playing a bunch of planeswalkers and life gain is great, but 2 Karn's Bastions. The 2 Karn's Bastions with the proliferate, keep in mind you are adding a ton of counters with Steel Overseer, and adding extra counters on top of that is tremendous, as well as the 4 planeswalkers you will be trotting about will also get to have a little bit of acceleration in terms of getting counters and staying relevant. Let's take a look at the sideboard. The sideboard, here, let's do it this way so we can see a little better. The sideboard in itself is a little bit up for grabs. It's something I didn't work much on, but 3 Baffling Ends will take care of most of early game threats. I have a Search for Ascanta for longer, grindier games. 4 Dovin Zetos for the control matchup. Narset, same thing for the control matchup. For anything that plays a lot of card draw, this is, you want to throw it in there. Ixalan's Binding, more control. I've got Settle the Wreckage for crowd control, same thing with an oh shit button called Cleansing Nova, and Mass Manipulation will win you certain games once it gets to that point. This is the deck. Again, the strategy for this deck is fairly simple. What you want to be doing is you want to be trotting out your Steel Overseer, and again, if you're running into heavy control decks, it's gonna get gross and it's gonna get tough to actually deal with, but you have alternate win conditions and ways to actually generate creatures. Tezzeret will create Karn will create creatures. You'll have other artifacts like the treasure map tokens to beef up your Karn tokens. Tezzeret creates a Thopter. Sai will create Thopters. You should be all right with the Karn's Bastion. Just make sure that you don't overcommit, because your board will steamroll into a pretty formidable board before you know it. Your pairing of Steel Overseer and Voltaic Servant, them two together just alone can really progress into a formidable duo of just beefing each other up and being ready on defense. You can go ahead and butt heads with all kinds of decks and just let those two sort of simmer and bubble up till they're ready to go, and then they become crazy. Again, same thing with the Voltaic Servant and Traxos. These two together can really put your opponent in a position where they got to pump the brakes and start worrying about it. Nonetheless, play on curve. You'll know the matchups. You'll probably want to make a couple adjustments based on whatever meta you're in. And have fun. This is the basic skeleton of it. Voltaic Servant, Steel Overseer, and Karn, as well as Tezzeret. Those four together make a pretty mean combo. So this is it. Hope you enjoy it, ladies and gentlemen. No name for it. I just called it Steely Dan because we have a Steel Overseer, and he looks like his name is Daniel. That's essentially what I'll say. So you guys can suggest a better name for it for sure. Steely Dan was a nice little idea that I had kind of simmering in the back of my head. I don't think it's anything groundbreaking, obviously. I just like the fact that, artifacts don't care about the color of your lands. How progressive of them, right? But you play them and they grow, and it's great. Steel Overseer, Voltaic Servant, these are great things. Traxos, whatever. It was just fun that we beat things like Grixis with it. We beat RDW with it. We beat Esper with this deck. We beat... I think we beat Jeskai Control with it as well. And we also beat, the only thing that we lost to was a Teamer Elementals that went pretty ham on us. But we did put up a good fight. Regardless, we're good. It's all fun and games. I don't know if white and blue is the best color pairing for this. You guys can probably, do better than me, as well as adding in extra fun lands like Field of Ruin, let's say, or Ark of Arazka. But these are all extra lands that you can throw in there. Nonetheless, that's the list. Thank you so much. If you got comments, if you think that there are better artifacts to throw in here, extra spice to make this, from a tier 19 deck to a tier 18 deck, I'm all ears. Please drop it in the comments here on YouTube, as well as hit that subscribe button because it's free and it means the world to me. I read all your comments, and anything that's constructive and awesome, I will reply to for sure. So cheers to you guys. You can catch me on Twitch, twitch.tv/watchflake, Monday to Friday, 10 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time, and sometimes in the evening. Nonetheless, check me out. Thank you so much. Be kind. I will talk to you very soon. Adios.